How does one explain evil? Is it something people are born with or something they learn? And if so, what can we do to stop it? Hi, I'm Morphix and this is my channel. And this question of what causes evil was pondered by an 18th century German philosopher named Gottlieb von Schillers. He suggested that humans have an inner beast, what he called a B-tier Gewalt, which translates roughly to wild force. Schiller believed that this inner beast was responsible for our more primitive desires, like our lust for power, our need for dominance, our drive for vengeance. These desires aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves, but Schiller argued that when these base instincts take over our minds, they can push us to commit evil acts. In other words, according to Schiller, all people have the capacity for evil. We might call this innate evil potential the root of all evil. But what makes some people tap into it and others not? That is, what pushes a person to do bad things? Well, in the mid-20th century, a psychologist named Ed Mann set out to find an answer. In particular, Mann wanted to know if there were personality traits that predicted criminal behavior. To find out, he gave nearly 2,000 people a personality test and then followed them for several years, keeping track of any crimes they committed. The results showed that the best predictor of criminal behavior was a high score on what came to be known as the M scale. The M scale measured what Manson called Machiavellianism. This refers to people who are characterized by their manipulative, exploitative, and deceptive behavior. They're the master manipulators, the charming sociopaths, the people who will stop at nothing to get what they want. Manson believed that people who scored high on the M scale were able to rationalize harmful behavior because they lacked certain personality traits, like empathy and remorse. This idea dovetails nicely with the work of another psychologist, Heribert Sidis, who studied what he called the psychology of the criminal mind. Sidis interviewed dozens of criminals, including murderers, and concluded that their behavior was motivated by three main factors: the thrill of the act itself, the desire for power and control, and a lack of empathy for others. So we seem to have a pretty good idea of what leads people to do bad things. But what about good people? You know, people who don't score high on the M scale and still do bad things. Why do good people do bad things? Well, in 2014, psychologists Evan Carter and colleagues explored this question. Like Mann's, Carter and his team gave their subjects a personality test. They also told their subjects that they were participating in a study about how stress affects decision-making. At various points throughout the experiment, the researchers would intentionally increase the subject's stress levels by giving them difficult math problems to solve or by telling them that their performance was worse than they thought it was. After each stressful task, the subjects were given the opportunity to zap the researcher who had been proctoring their test with a supposedly painful but not dangerous electric shock. The subjects could choose the intensity of the shock anywhere from 0 volts to 150 volts. And here's the kicker. The researchers told the subjects that the shocks were actually real, even though they weren't. They just wanted to see how much pain the subjects would inflict on another human being after going through a stressful situation. What they found was that everyone, regardless of their baseline level of morality, zapped the researcher more than they expected. In other words, good people did bad things. Why do you think this happens? Well, Carter believes that when faced with a stressful situation, people rely on mental shortcuts or heuristics to help them make decisions quickly. One such heuristic is the negativity bias, which is our tendency to focus on negative or unpleasant information. So when we're stressed, we tend to focus on the negative aspects of the situation and the potential harm that could come from it. This negativity bias causes us to engage in more self-protective and less pro-social behaviors. In other words, we're more likely to act in our own self-interest rather than the interest of others. But why do good people have this negativity bias? Well, Carter believes it's an evolutionary adaptation. Our ancestors, like all animals, had to constantly struggle for survival. So it made sense for those with negativity biases to be more successful. They were more likely to spot a lurking tiger or an encroaching rival, and therefore more likely to survive and pass on their genes, including their negativity biases. So that's why good people do bad things sometimes. Now, what can we do about it? Well, Carter believes that the best solution is education. If we understand the negativity bias and other heuristics that lead us to do bad things, we're less likely to fall prey to them. He and his colleagues are currently working on just such a program to teach people about these mental shortcuts and how to overcome them. Let's hope it works. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you soon.